She was old, fragile, and carried the kind of grace that only years of life could give. She sat in her wheelchair on the cold platform, rain dripping from the station roof, one hand clutching the side of her chair as she pressed the call button for someone, anyone, to help. The light flickered, but no footsteps came. The silence around her was louder than the rain. No one came. The train doors opened, passengers hurried past, and Amelia whispered, "Please, just a little help." But no one listened, and as the train pulled away, leaving her alone and shivering, she realized a cruel truth. Poverty had taken her choices, disability had taken her strength, and society had stolen her dignity. What no one knew was that fate had planned a future through her that would lead to a better experience for every disabled passenger who would ever pass through that station. Before we proceed, kindly like, follow, or subscribe for more stories like this. Amelia was not born into wealth. She lived in a council flat in Birmingham, surviving on a small pension and what little her son, James, could scrape together while working odd jobs. Her husband had passed years earlier, leaving her to raise James alone. She had once been proud and strong, a factory worker who could lift heavy loads and walk miles home without complaint. But illness crept in, slowly stealing her legs and leaving her in a wheelchair. From that moment on, every outing became a test, not of her will, but of the world around her. On one particular evening, Amelia needed to catch the very last train home. The sky outside was dark and heavy, the kind of rain that pounded against the glass roof of the station as if the heavens themselves were weeping. Inside, the air was damp, filled with the sound of shoes squeaking, luggage wheels rattling, and hurried voices echoing through the hall. Amelia sat quietly at the assistance point, her thin hands gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. Her coat was old and worn, rainwater darkening its edges. She pressed the silver button for help. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Her heart pounded harder with each second. People rushed around her, heads down, collars pulled high, umbrellas dripping. It was as if she wasn't even there. Finally, she caught sight of a guard in a navy jacket. Gathering her courage, she raised her trembling voice. "Excuse me, sir. Could you help me onto the train?" He barely slowed his stride. Without even meeting her eyes, he muttered, "You should have booked ahead." "I did," whispered Amelia, lifting her ticket with shaking fingers. "I have the booking here." But he was already gone, swallowed by the crowd. The announcement rang out. "Platform 3, now boarding." Her pulse quickened. It was the last train of the night. If she missed it, she would be stranded. She pushed her wheels forward, inching through the rushing bodies around her. Some people sighed in irritation as she slowed their pace. Others stepped around her like she was an obstacle, not a person. Finally, she reached the carriage door. The train stood before her, humming with life, warm light spilling from its windows. But the gap between the platform and the step up into the carriage was impossible. For her, it was not just a step, it was a wall. She looked around desperately. "Please," she called out, louder this time, her voice cracking with urgency. "Please, can someone help me?" The doors beeped their warning. One last desperate chance. No one moved. With a final hiss, the doors slid shut in front of her face. The train lurched forward, its lights pulling away into the darkness. The platform fell silent again, save for the endless drumming of the rain. Amelia sat there frozen. Her body trembled, her clothes damp and clinging to her frail frame. Tears slipped down her cheeks, mixing with the rain on her skin. For the first time in years, she didn't feel strong, or proud, or resilient. She felt invisible. abandoned. When James found her later that night, she was still sitting in her chair, soaked and pale. He rushed to her side, his voice shaking. "Mum!" He dropped to his knees beside her, brushing wet strands of silver hair from her face. "Mum, what happened?" She hesitated. For a moment, she wanted to protect him from the truth. She wanted to hide the shame, the humiliation of being treated as less than human. But her voice cracked under the weight of it, and the story spilled out. Every second of waiting, every button pressed in vain, every word that was never spoken, every face that turned away. James listened, his young hands, rough from odd jobs and endless work, clasping hers tightly. His jaw clenched, his eyes burned with tears he didn't want her to see. And in that moment, though he was only a skinny boy with calloused palms, he made a silent promise. He pressed her hand to his chest, whispered, "Never again," and swore within himself, "One day, Mum, one day I'll make this right."
Days turned into years, and James never forgot the sight of his mother that night. Damp clothes clinging to her frail frame, her eyes red from tears, her spirit crushed not by the weight of her disability, but by the weight of society's indifference. That memory became the fire that drove him. While his friends spent weekends in pubs or holidays at the seaside, James spent his nights hunched over second-hand computers, teaching himself to code. He worked shifts in warehouses by day and studied business by candlelight in their small flat by night. Every setback hardened his resolve. Every small success fed his hunger to climb higher. He started with a tiny contract, designing software for a local firm. From there, he built a small technology company, and when it succeeded, he reinvested every pound into another. What began as a boy with nothing but determination grew into an empire. Soon, his name was whispered in boardrooms, spoken with respect by investors, and printed in business magazines. And yet, no matter how high he climbed, James carried with him the image of his mother on that lonely platform. In moments of triumph, when others celebrated with champagne and luxury, he closed his eyes and saw her waiting for a train that never welcomed her. So when the opportunity came, James did not hesitate. Quietly, without press releases or fanfare, he purchased a significant stake in the very train company where his mother had once been neglected. And with that power, he made a promise, not just to her, but to every vulnerable soul who might one day stand where she once stood. His first order was uncompromising. No passenger, regardless of wealth, age, or disability, would ever again be left behind. He poured millions into rebuilding stations. Ramps and lifts were installed at every platform, making accessibility a right, not a privilege. He created a special department within the company, dedicated to passenger assistance, ensuring that no one would ever wait in vain for help. But he knew policies alone were not enough, so he changed the culture. Every staff member, from guards to executives, underwent training, not just in procedures, but in compassion. They were taught to see the humanity in every passenger, to understand that behind each wheelchair, each walking stick, each tired face, there was a story, a life, a dignity worth protecting. He didn't stop there. He increased staffing during peak hours so help would never be unavailable. He funded community outreach programs to hear directly from disabled passengers about their experiences. He even established an independent watchdog group to hold the company accountable, ensuring promises made were promises kept. What once had been a company known for indifference slowly transformed into one praised for humanity. And though the press eventually discovered that James was behind it, he never sought the spotlight. For him, the victory was not in headlines or applause. It was in knowing that somewhere, on some rainy evening, another mother, another father, another child in a wheelchair would not be left alone on a platform, abandoned by the world. Because James knew, true wealth is not measured in numbers on a screen. It is measured in the lives you touch, the dignity you restore, and the pain you prevent. And for him, it all began with a promise whispered to a crying mother on a cold night in Birmingham. Amelia, now older and frailer, saw the changes unfold. She never told anyone it was her son who had pushed them through. She simply smiled, watching strangers in wheelchairs, parents with prams, and the elderly step onto trains with dignity instead of shame. When James asked her if she was proud, she just held his hand and whispered, "I'm proud that no one else will feel what I felt that night." Amelia's story is not just about one woman in one station. It's about every person who has ever been overlooked, brushed aside, or treated as invisible because of poverty, disability, or age. It reminds us that true change does not come from wealth alone. It comes from compassion, from choosing to see the people the world ignores, from deciding that dignity should never be optional. The next time you're at a station, in a shop, or even walking down the street, remember Amelia. Remember the tears she shed on that cold platform, and ask yourself, would I have walked past, or would I have stopped? Because the truth is this: injustice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the silence of people who refuse to care. But kindness can be louder, and it can change everything. If this story touched you, like and share it. Let it remind the world that when disability meets discrimination, pain follows. But when humanity meets compassion, dignity is restored. And change, as Amelia and James proved, can begin with us.